Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back again this evening to continue calling for a windfall profit tax on the oil and gas industry. I'm doing so, first of all, because life continues to become less and less affordable for folks in my community, and corporate profits have a lot to do with it. In fact, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found in January of 2023 that for every dollar spent on higher prices in the last 2 years, 47 cents was converted into corporate profits in 4 industries, with mining and oil and gas leading the way. Now, lots of attention in this place, at least, has been placed on the carbon tax, but here's the fact. Much more responsible for the increased costs and day-to-day living is the gouging of the oil and gas industry. In fact, in 2022, the carbon price went up 2 cents a litre. The profits of the industry went up 18 cents a litre, and there are no rebates on that gouging. In fact, in 2022, the 5 largest oil and gas companies operating in Canada alone, they made more than $38 billion, and that's after they repaid shareholders $29 billion in increased dividends and share repurchases. Meanwhile, the climate crisis rages on. Canada is warming twice the rate the global average. The Canadian Arctic is warming about 3 times the global rate, and the impacts of the climate crisis are being felt across the country with more severe and more extreme weather events, including wildfires that consumed almost 46 million acres in 2023. Now, this government could both address the affordability crisis and fund climate solutions by taking a step they've already taken with banks and life insurance companies in the pandemic, and that's introducing a windfall profit tax on the oil and gas industry. It's what I proposed in Motion 92 over a year ago. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has now already studied it. A one-time tax on 15% of profits over $1 billion would generate $4.2 billion, every dollar of which could go towards proven climate solutions that make life more affordable. For example, to public transit, to both reduce fares and improve service at a time when this government is talking about the next public transit fund not starting until 2026. This is the money that could get that going a whole lot faster. It's also well supported, most importantly by Canadians. 62% of Canadians in a recent nationwide poll support a windfall profit tax on oil and gas. It's likely why the idea has such strong support amongst my colleagues in different parties, including the Bloc, NDP, and the Liberal Party. It's partly why, the UN Secretary General, as another example, his words, he calls on, quote, all developed economies to tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. Environmental organizations across the country, like the David Suzuki Foundation, quote, momentum is building for a windfall profit tax on oil and gas companies' excessive profits. It's easy to see why. The fossil fuel industry has made the affordability crisis harder for people while making out like bandits. Canadians for Tax Fairness is another. Windfall profit tax is one way to make sure oil and gas companies aren't capitalizing on our affordability crisis. Other countries, the EU, the UK. In fact, this government planned to put it in last year's budget and pulled it back at the last minute after intense lobbying from the industry. It's clear from the polls, Canadians want to see more from this government on affordability and the climate crisis. Why not introduce a windfall profit tax and demonstrate they have the big ideas necessary to meet the moment that we're in?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable friend and colleague from Kitchener Centre for his continued advocacy on this important issue and policy step. It's important, and I'd like to say that our government firmly believes that at a time when middle-class Canadians are struggling to get ahead and when it feels to so many like their hard work isn't paying off as much as it used to, it's necessary for the government to improve fairness in Canada's tax system. And as you know, since 2015, our government has reduced taxes for the middle class, and we take steps forward on this very, very seriously. The member knows that since I was a very young guy, I've always been an environmentalist and a staunch advocate for climate action. We've had many conversations about this and many other issues. I just want to state, though, that I don't find this government's contributions and focus on things like active transportation and public transit to be trivial. In fact, I think they've been massive steps forward. In Milton, for example, one of the first announcements that I made was $4 million for a new public transit system. And this is in a suburban community without a lot of density. I'd say that we're just kind of getting there when it comes to public transit being a necessity for our community. But our government's been there as a partner, whether that's through the gas tax, whether that's through that transfer that we do with the municipal funds. Our government really has been there. And since 2015, our government's reduced taxes on the middle class twice. We've implemented a number of measures to ensure that the wealthiest individuals across the economy in Canada and corporations that are contributing their share, most recently with capital gains changes, which, some of these things are tough. Like, hard things are hard. And when a government decides that we're going to take steps forward to find a fairer way to deal with taxation and the services that Canadians require, things like childcare and dental and pharmacare and other important services that Canadians all rely on at a free or an affordable rate, we know that the wealthiest people in Canada are powerful, and they have the ability to do pushback and, yes, lobbying, as the member pointed out. So we take those risks, and we take them confidently, and we step forward for Canadians because we know that it's the right thing to do. And we believe now that it's time to ask the wealthiest Canadians to contribute a little bit more. It's true that the wealthiest Canadians have gotten wealthier over the last 5 or 6 years, and we've talked a lot about this K-shaped curve in this House, which, following the pandemic, has resulted in the Canadians, who are struggling a little bit before the pandemic, struggling worse now, and folks who had a lot now have more. So doing this and taking this step forward will allow us to move forward with bold actions announced in the most recent budget, and to build a fairer future with transformative instruments for housing and innovation with respect to the clean economy and for younger generations. These major investments require new revenues, and that's why we've proposed in Budget 2024 to increase the inclusion rate on capital gains realized annually above $250,000 by individuals on all capital gains realized by corporations and from trusts from 1/2 to 2/3 effective this past June 25th. And we expect that this new measure will generate more than $19 billion in new revenues over the next 5 years. And thanks to these new revenues, we'll be able to build better supports to those who need it most and make investments that will increase fairness for everyone. Madam Speaker, I reflect back on some of the efforts from the first Trudeau government in the late 70s and early 80s to create a stronger social safety net and more non-market housing to ensure that everybody has a place to live. And, I know a lot of MPs in this House have conversations frequently with people who are really frustrated and struggling and in legitimate need of housing. We have a lack of affordable housing in my community. In fact, I spoke to a gentleman just recently who is living in his truck, and he's fallen on really tough times. We need to find solutions for gentlemen like him, and these measures to tax the wealthiest Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Parliamentary Secretary talked about finding solutions. We've got one for him right here. If he's looking for $4.2 billion that could be investing in making life more affordable for folks in Milton the same way it would in Kitchener Centre, if he's wondering where can I find the wealthiest folks to make sure we redirect those funds towards those who need it the most, we've got the answer. It's the oil and gas industry. $38 billion from the top 5 companies alone. If we even just put a 15% tax on profits above $1 billion, the way that other countries already have, the way that economic experts are calling for, the way that Canadians are calling for, we could use that money to invest in the public transit I know he is a champion for, to invest in retrofitting folks' homes. The question is the same. If this government pretends to understand the climate crisis and the affordability crisis, why are they not moving quickly to put in place a windfall profit tax on these excess profits of the oil and gas industry?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I take exception a little bit with the suggestion that we haven't taken what oil and gas executives and these mega corporations have been doing. We had them at the Environment Committee, and I demanded answers from some of those CEOs. And frankly, what I heard back from those CEOs was inadequate. It was a demonstration they actually don't know where they're invested and the impact that they're particularly on the oil sands side, the impact that they're having on the environment. It's absolutely devastating, Madam Speaker. But the suggestion this government hasn't taken all necessary actions to both combat the climate crisis, buoy our economy through what so many economists said 2 or 3 years ago was a certain recession. Well, we've avoided that recession. We've balanced our priorities to make sure that we've protected jobs, we've lowered our emissions. At this time right now, interest rates are down, inflation is down, and gas prices are down.